When I ended the last video, I was pretty excited because the series was about to take a turn from the concepts and logic of networks into the configuration, which I love. I love doing the setup and config of a network. But before we can even get into the configuration of Cisco switches and start setting them up on our network, we have to understand their operating system. So that's where we are right now, working with the Cisco switch iOS. We're going to take a look at what the Cisco iOS is all about. It's their operating system. Then we'll walk through kind of general navigation. I want to give you just a feel for what you're about to get into. Kind of like if you were in Windows, I'd say, okay, this is your GUI. This is what you click on to open my computer. This is your C drive and that sort of thing. I want to give you that same feel for the iOS. Then I want to get into the iOS modes because understanding what command to type in the iOS is, in my opinion, not as important as to know what mode to be in. We'll talk more about that as we get into it. Well, let's start off with the question, what is the Cisco iOS? If I were to ask that question in a classroom environment, I would, I'm sure, immediately get many hands where people would say, it is the Inner Network Operating System. And I always reply to that, not what does it stand for, but what is it? What is the iOS? It does stand for Internet Network Operating System, but what it is it's the operating system of Cisco. It is a command line interface, and if you want to see it in all its glory, there it is. That's the operating system of Cisco, a blinking cursor after a pound symbol. So what's the big deal? I mean, we all have DOS prompts in Windows. Well, this Internetwork operating system is a series of commands. It's a command set to set up any of Cisco's devices. Frankly, Cisco has made the statement, we are a software vendor. Because if you look, just about every other manufacturer out there of network equipment can make the same stuff that Cisco can, hardware-wise. I mean, it all has the same lights, it all has the same ports, it's all the same standard. So why choose Cisco? Well, primarily because of the iOS. The iOS is a operating system that is similar on every single Cisco device you'll encounter. You can see it, the third bullet down, it is a consistent operating system through all Cisco devices. Even devices that don't use the iOS. For example, Cisco creates firewalls called the PIX firewalls or ASA firewalls that people use to protect their network. And it is a good security measure not to have that firewall use the same operating system as the other devices in the network, because if there was some kind of vulnerability, I mean, in the iOS, then somebody could discover it and break into the firewall as well. So what Cisco did was create a different operating system for their firewalls, but they made it look the same and feel the same and use similar commands as the iOS. So it's the same look and same feel no matter what device you're on. If you think about it, it's kind of like Windows. Everybody agrees, you know, Microsoft is a software company. They make Windows. That's what made them famous. But, you know, nobody really applies that logic to Cisco because they see so much of this Cisco equipment. They think, oh, Cisco is into hardware. The beauty of this iOS I'm about to show you is that you can use it or learn it once and use it many times. It doesn't matter if you're on a switch, if you're on a router, whatever device you're on, you're going to get the same look, the same feel, same style of configuration. Now, the iOS is an operating system, but it's not like Windows in the sense that you don't boot a switch and there's some kind of monitor or a display that you're looking at that has all the output. You actually walk up to your switch or router, typically with a laptop, and connect to it to configure it. That's how you access the iOS. So we're working in the LAN switching environment to start off with. We'll move into routers later. So the first step in configuring a Cisco switch is to get a console cable. You can see a picture of it in the upper right hand corner here on your screen. Now that console cable is a specially engineered cable that will take an RJ45, it looks like an Ethernet connector, and convert it to a serial connector that will plug into the back of your computer. So you can see step 2 is to take the serial end of your console cable and plug it into your PC. Now, hopefully, when you bought your Cisco equipment, you got a console cable with it, because every Cisco device that you buy will have a console cable. But if not, you can go on eBay or any store and they'll be able to sell you one. Really, it's just a fancy Ethernet cable, and we'll talk more about them in just a moment. But you plug into the back of your PC, you plug the RJ45 in to the console port on the switch. Now I brought in a picture right here of a switch, the front view right there, and then the back view, which is above. A lot of people, when they first get into Cisco, plug the console cable into one of those ports where the arrows are pointing, and they find out, well, that's not going to work because those are Ethernet ports. Those are where your PC is attached to. On the back of the switch will be this port labeled console. It says it right on top of it. That is where that cable plugs into. So you've got the RJ45 side plugged into the switch. You've got the serial side plugged into the PC. Now what? Well, on the PC that you plugged into, you need to get a terminal program. The most popular that people use is Hyperterminal, which is included with Windows. You just go to Start, Programs, Accessories, hit Communications, and there you will see Hyperterminal. Now, I'm not showing that to you yet because that is actually the worst program that you could possibly use to do configurations on a Cisco router. Yes, I did say it was the most popular, but it's the worst. It's the most popular just because it comes with Windows, and it's the worst because there's a lot of bugs that are in it by default. It's one you want to probably steer clear from. My favorite is TerraTerm. It's also free. You just go to Google and type in TerraTerm. It's open source, so you'll be able to just click a link and download TerraTerm to your PC. So you'll run one of these programs. I gave a couple more in that list, some of which are not free, like Secure CRT, but somewhat popular. So you'll download this program, run the program, and set it to connect via the COM port. The COM port, or the communications port, COM1, COM2, that kind of thing, that's what links to your serial port on your computer. Most computers will be using COM1, which most computers only have one COM port. And so you'll set those COM port settings to 9600, 8 data bits, no parity, one stop bit, and flow control is none. Let me show this to you. I'm going to show it to you using Hyperterminal on my computer. All right, here I am on my desktop. I'm just going to click on Start, shoot over to Programs, Accessories, Communications down here at the bottom, and there is Hyperterminal. Now you want to click on the icon itself, not one of these sub-programs, and it'll pop up and say, what kind of connection do you want to make? And it'll ask for a name. So I usually just type in console. You can't type in con for short because that's reserved. So console is my name. I click on OK, and it's going to ask, do you want to connect using a COM port or TCP/IP, meaning you want to telnet to a device. I'm going to connect using my COM port and click on OK. This is the settings that I was just showing you. By default, it comes up with 9600 8N1N, which goes back to the baud rate, data bits, parity, stop bits, and flow control. Those are the exact settings that it must be. Now, being that that is the #1 tech support call Cisco gets, I would definitely suggest you keep that in mind, because if one of these settings are off, when you try and connect using the console port, it won't work. And you can see Cisco's tech support call already, your device doesn't work. And they just say, well, check these settings, and sure enough, that fixes it. So when I click on OK, it's good to go. And you can see it shows connected and everything like that. All I need to do is hit the Enter key a couple times, and that will bring up a prompt. Now, as of right now, I don't actually have a Cisco device plugged into this console port, but that is getting at least Hyperterminal set up to connect to the Cisco router or switch. Now, I prefer to use TerraTerm. That's my favorite because Hyperterminal does not let you change the background colors. And for some reason, after a couple hours, staring at a white background with black text kind of fries my eyes. I like the black background with green text. I don't know if it goes back to the mainframe days or what, but it's more appealing to me. But this is a connection into an iOS-based switch. I've connected using the console port, and I'm just sitting in one of the command modes right now. Before I get into the command modes, though, I want to show you why Cisco became famous with this operating system. Most of that fame comes from their help system. At any point, if you're ever stuck as to what to type, I can just hit question mark. Oh, let me click in there. Question mark, and see a list of all the commands that I can type from this prompt. Now you can see I've got access enable, access templates, archive, CD. All of these are different commands that I could type if at any given point. Now down here I have a more symbol. They borrowed this from Unix, but if you want to scroll one line at a time, you just hit enter on the keyboard. If you want to scroll one page at a time, you hit the space bar, and that will scroll a page at a time. If you ever want to stop the output, you can just hit Q or any other character other than space or the enter key, and that will stop the output right at where you hit it. Now that's the help system. That's what the question mark does, but let's take it a little further because it goes a little further. Let's say I wanted to set the clock on my Cisco router. Now the clock command is, frankly, clock. If I scroll back up, I can see clock right there in the list. But say I'm down here, I'm just at a prompt, and I forgot how to type clock. It's one of those days. I'm like, I know it begins with C. I can hit C question mark, and it shows me all the commands that start with C. Hit CL and hit question mark, it shows me all the commands that start with CL. So I go, clock, that's how you spell it. So I type in clock, space, and hit the enter key. Now right there it says incomplete command, saying, oh, there's more to type than that. So what I can do is look at my keyboard and hit the up arrow. That recalls the previous command I typed in. I can actually hit it a couple times if I want to see some of the other commands. So I do clock space question mark, notice the space, and now it will tell me what to type next. So I say, oh, clock set. So I type in set there. Hit enter. Oh, incomplete command. You see what I'm doing is I'm hitting the enter key. I'll hit up arrow on the keyboard there because I want to get you used to the fact that you should be hitting question mark more often than you should be hitting enter. It's very safe to use the question mark at all times on a Cisco router. If you're preparing for a certification exam, on the certification exam, they let you use the question mark in the simulations because Cisco realizes everybody uses the question mark for most things. You get stuck on a command, you're like, oh, what's next? You hit space question mark, and it says, oh, type in the current time. So I look at my clock. It is in military time, 1316 hours. I'll put 30 seconds in there. Space question mark, and you see it's walking me through piece by piece of this syntax. I look at the day of the month. Let's see, it is the 17th. So I type in 17. Oh, wait a sec. Before I go any further, I want to talk about this syntax real quick. You notice day of the month or month of the year. You can type in either or is what it's trying to tell you. Now, I live in the United States of America, and for whatever reason, the Westerners like to put the month first. I know the Easterners like to put the day first. Now, right now it is September. If I were to say September, that'd be, what's, 09? If you type in 09 there for September, it's going to think you're typing in the day of the month. Because right here it's telling you what to type. A number through 1 through 31 represents the day of the month. And then it says month in all capital letters represents month of the year. So I can't type in 09 to represent September. And this leads me to the point that anytime you see something in all capitals in the help menu, that should tell you that this is a variable. It wants you to actually type something there, namely September, September, or you can just abbreviate and put sept, space question mark. Now it's asking me for the day of the month. It realizes I went the right direction of typing in the month, so I'll put in 17th because that's the day it is. Hit question mark, and now it asks for the year. It is currently 2007 as our year. Maybe quite a bit later when you're watching this video. Hit question mark, and now it says CR. That's short for carriage return. When you see that, you know you're done typing the command. So you can see that they have almost like a wizard that walks you through every single command syntax that you want to type. Will you have to memorize some commands for Cisco? Absolutely. There will be some commands you just have to know off the top of your head. For example, I would never know that I could set the clock without knowing what the clock command does. You'll have to know at least the beginning of each command, but the question mark will always help you through the specifics. That's what made Cisco famous. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to hit the question mark one more time to show you the next piece of Cisco's help system or shortcut system. They have the ability, I just did a quick question mark right here for the first initial commands. The Cisco iOS has the ability to use shortcuts for any command that you want as long as you type in enough characters for the command to be recognized uniquely. For example, when we get into the modes in just a moment, one of the commands that we'll talk about is configure terminal. That moves you into a configuration mode. Now I can actually use shortcuts for configure. I could type in, something shorter than the full word and it will take it. Now if I type in CON and hit enter, it says ambiguous command. That tells me I wasn't specific enough. Ambiguous is just too broad. So I type in CON question mark and it says, oh, well, there's two commands that start with CON, configure and connect. So by looking at that, I say, well, okay, I need to type enough characters for it to be unique, so CONF should do it. Now, one of the ways that you'll know if you've typed enough characters for it to be unique is a very handy key, and that is your tab key on the keyboard. As soon as I hit the tab key, it finishes the command for me. It's borrowed from Linux and Unix. They have that feature as well. You can type just enough characters for it to be uniquely recognized and hit the tab key and it finishes the command. If I didn't type enough characters, say I typed in CO, when I hit tab, it's going to just, not finish anything. CON, nope, that's the tab key. CONF, there, we finished the command. Now I want to know what to type next, so I hit question mark. It says configure, and the syntax that I want to type in is configure from the terminal. Now, how many letters would I have to type in for terminal to be unique? Just one. Looking at it, there's no other command here that starts with T. So as soon as I type T and hit the tab key, it takes the command. So I typed in configure terminal, and I'm now in something called global configuration mode. Starting to get into a discussion of the modes and what those are all about. But before I do and get into that full discussion, I want to make sure that I also mention I've been hitting the tab key to finish the commands and use shortcuts that way. But you can just type in shortcuts without hitting the tab key, and it'll do the same thing. So that's one of the beauties of the iOS is you can shortcut any command that exists as long as you type enough characters for it to be considered unique. So with that in mind, let's talk about the modes. I'm going to type in exit, which will exit me out of my session. Notice it says switch A, con 0 is now available. It tells me what port I'm plugged into. I'm plugged into the console port. It's considered port 0. Hit enter to get started. Now, when I first get into a Cisco device, I start in this mode known as user mode. I know I'm in user mode because it shows switch A, which is the name of the switch, with a little right angle bracket sitting next to it. That mode is also referred to as user exec. You can see right over here, switch with a little right angle bracket, user mode, or it's technically known as user exec. From user mode, you can't do very much at all. You can do some basic show commands to see what's going on the switch, maybe a telnet command to telnet to other devices, or a ping command to test your connectivity, but it's very limited. It's meant to be just a very basic monitoring mode for the switch. So if I want to be able to do anything, I need to move to privilege mode. The command to do that is enable. I type in enable, and you see that my prompt changes from a little right angle bracket right there to a pound symbol. From there, that tells me I am now in privilege mode. At that mode, I can view anything on my Cisco switch. While user mode had some limited show commands where I could see maybe some things like the IP address and things like that, privilege mode allows me to see anything. I could see the status of my switch. I could see how many packets are coming in and going out. I can even see what passwords my switch is configured with. It's like the unlimited access mode. With one command, enable, I move from user mode to privilege mode. I enable myself to start messing with this switch. Now, from this privilege mode, I can just do verification commands. Show commands is technically what they're called, where I can see all of the status. Yes, there are other things I can do, like ping commands and telnet and so on, but I can't actually configure anything on my switch. All I can do is view the configuration. So, if I want to be able to configure something, I need to move into this global configuration mode. That was the command I just walked you through, configure terminal. Now it's from this mode that I can configure any global setting on my switch, thus the name global. Think about the modes kind of like, I don't know, working on a car. When you're working on a car, you have to be in the right place. For instance, if I want to change the oil on my car, I need to lift up the lid. I'm in hood configuration mode, right? I'm looking under the hood. If I want to mess with the upholstery and vacuum the carpets, I need to get on the inside of the car. Maybe I'm in an interior configuration mode. I've got to be in the right mode of my car in order to get to the right areas. If I want to kidnap somebody, I put them in the trunk of my car. So you got to get in the right mode. That's a joke, by the way. Now, in the Cisco iOS, the mode really matters, and that tells you what you're configuring. Global configuration mode allows me to change things. I'll type in configure terminal. This is global. I can change things that globally affect this switch. For instance, if I wanted to change the name of my switch, I can type in hostname Jeremy switch. Enter. And you can see right away the name changed from switch A to Jeremy switch. And I don't want you to focus on this command. We'll talk about the commands a little later. But what I want you to see is the mode. It's something that globally affected the whole switch, like the name. Now from here, from global, notice we started in user, we moved to privilege, we moved to global. I can now move into one of hundreds of other configuration modes. For example, I showed you on the previous video how the switch learns MAC addresses on its interfaces. Well, if I wanted to set up one of those interfaces, I could type in interface fast Ethernet and then go into the one I want. Maybe I want to go into fast Ethernet 0/1. Again, I don't want you to worry about the syntax so much of what I just typed, but more so about the mode. This represents the mode. I am now in interface configuration mode, and anything that I type from right here affects just this one interface on my switch. So I could change the speed of this interface. I could change the duplex from full to half or half to full. I can make any change to this interface because I'm now in interface configuration mode. If I wanted to get out, I'm done configuring my interfaces, there's two ways, well, three actually, that I could do it. One is I could type in end. That drops me all the way back out. Notice I was in interface and I dropped all the way back to privilege mode. Drops all modes completely. Let me get back in there. I'll go into interface fast Ethernet 0/1. So I'm back in interface configuration mode using shortcuts to get me there. I can also type in exit. Exit, as opposed to end, moves me back one level at a time. So instead of dropping all the way back to privilege mode, I can just go back to global and then type in exit again if I really wanted to get back to privilege mode and jump out there. I also have what I call the bailout command, meaning I'm sitting under the interface, maybe I even have some stuff typed in there, and I just want to bail out of whatever I'm doing and get back to privilege mode. You can type in Control Z. Holding down the control symbol on your keyboard and hitting Z will back you out of whatever configuration mode you're in. It doesn't even matter if you have stuff typed in there. Notice it said, hey, by the way, you had some invalid stuff typed in at this marker, but it pretty much bails you out no matter where you're at. Oh, and I forgot about this. The invalid input. That was one more feature of the help system. Like maybe I wanted to set the clock or do some settings with the clock, and I typed in cloak in some strange way. As soon as I hit enter, the iOS will tell me, hey, the invalid input detected at this character. So if you spell something wrong, you don't even need to know, like reread everything. It'll point it out to you with a little caret saying, right there is your problem. That's where you started going wrong into a command that I don't recognize. So those are the different modes. Again, I don't so much want to focus on config here. I want to show you the different modes that you can navigate between on the devices. This goes for switches as well as it does for routers. The commands that you type in privilege mode will not work in global config mode. The commands you type in global config won't work in privilege or user mode. You have to know not only the commands you want to type, but what mode you should be in. So just to review, you get into your Cisco switch, says the console port's now available, you hit enter. First mode that you're in is user mode. To get to privilege mode, where I can actually do some stuff, I type in EN, which is the shortcut, or enable, which is the full command. I'm now sitting in privilege mode. From here, I can do all the show commands I want to, some ping test commands, and so on, but can't do any real configuration. So I need to move into global configuration mode to start off. That's your starting point. You can't move straight from privilege to interface mode or something like that. You have to go user to privilege, privilege to global, then global to one of your other modes on your switch. So from here, you can do your configuration. When you're done, Control Z will get you back out. If you ever want to recall one of the previous commands you've typed, just hit the up arrow on the keyboard and it'll cycle through. In my case, there's only two. Cycle through the commands that you've entered. Let me just type in a couple show commands, show this, show that, just so you can see that I can hit the up arrows and scroll through it. If I want to see a history of all the commands I've typed, I can type in show history. And that will show me all, and you can see show history is the most recent one, but all of the commands that I've typed, so I know exactly how far to scroll back to see those commands. It will be able to remember up to 10 by default, but I can always change that using some config commands we'll talk about later. So the last 10 commands you typed in. Now, when you're working in the iOS, last thing I'll show you, we will see as we're navigating through and learning commands, there are a lot of times where you'll come back to a command and you'll want to get to the beginning of it. You can use your left and right arrows to scroll back and forth wherever you are in the command. You can always enter stuff in between the characters that you've typed, so it's very friendly that way. And so you can move to the beginning, and for instance, one of the commands we'll see is we can type in no in front of whatever we've typed in to remove some configuration. So you can do that by squeezing at the beginning. One shortcut I'll show you on that, and then I'll be done with shortcuts, all right? Control E moves your cursor to the end of the line. Control A moves your cursor to the beginning of the line. You can see my cursor, Control E, Control A moves to the beginning. That's handy. Just think A is the beginning of the alphabet, because there are times where you'll be typing, and let me just type in the brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The brown, there we go. I wanted to show you that as this line gets longer and longer, eventually the iOS will cut you off. You see this little $sign at the beginning? I shouldn't say cut you off, but move things over. The $sign means there's more to the left. So if I hit Control A, watch this, moves my cursor back to the beginning and I can see everything over here. And look, the $sign moved over to the end. Control E, moves me to the end, and now I can see the $sign at the beginning. That just means there's more to the left or there's more to the right. So that's navigation. Control A, beginning of the alphabet. Control E, think of as the end of the alphabet, E for end. That's a great way to move your cursor around quickly. Mission accomplished. What I wanted to do before we got into the configuration of a switch was to get you familiar with Cisco's operating system. Not so much the commands to type in, but how to navigate around. We first talked about what the iOS is. It stands for the Inter-Network Operating System. It is Cisco's command line way to work with all of their devices. Yes, there are graphic interfaces out there for Cisco. However, you can never do quite as much with the GUI as you can with the command line, and you usually can do it with command line much faster. You can see how to get the help in the iOS. Remember the question mark. Question mark if you don't know what to type. Question mark after some characters if you want to see what commands start with that. Or space question mark as you're typing commands to see what the next piece of syntax is. Question mark will help you through the whole way. Tab to finish the partially typed command. Whew, there's so many shortcuts. I can't recap them all right there. The last one we talked about was the iOS modes. It all starts from user mode, you move into privilege mode, then global config, then you can either start your config there or jump into one of the other of hundreds of configuration modes and fully set up your Cisco device. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.